Is it just me, or are UFC headliners getting worse? Doesn't it feel like in the last year or so that there's just been a ton of throwaway headliners? Like, who exactly asked for Sergey Spivak versus Marcin Tybura? I'm not even sure I'm interested in that fight on the undercard, but I'm damn sure I'm not as a headliner.
Harsh but fair.
I apologize to both of them. I just needed a strong example to start. I mean, this is the UFC. Why would the premier MMA organization in the world ever headline a card with a weak fight? It just doesn't make any sense. And yet, I know I'm not the only one who feels like these main events are getting weaker because I see you all talking about them out there in cyberspace. But are we overreacting? Are things worse? How do we know that we're not just looking back at yesteryear with just bleed-tinted glasses? Maybe things have always been like this, but for some reason lately, it just feels like a bigger problem. I guess really the only way to find out if UFC main events are getting weaker would be to, like, I don't know, have somebody go through all 472 main events over the last decade or so and break down each one so that we could determine what headliners were weak, and then maybe in doing that we could get a larger picture about whether main events really are getting worse or if we're just overreacting. But that would take someone hours and hours to do. And who has that kind of time?
Tommy.
Okay, you don't have to twist my arm, I'll do it. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and I want to know if UFC main events are getting worse. So, okay, what makes a main event good or bad? Well, I think the vast majority of you would agree that it comes down to whether or not the fight is significant in some way. Is it for a title? Will the winner of this fight get a title shot? Is this bout between fighters in the top 5 of a division who then might find themselves in a title fight or title eliminator? But significance isn't just about championships in mixed martial arts, so I've also taken into account star power. Is it a Diaz or Masvidal level fighter? A former champ still in the hunt? Someone on a hot streak? I'm talking the intangible stuff. If it is, then it's still significant, even if it doesn't affect the title picture. And significance is how we determine whether a main event is strong or weak. Now, can any fight suck regardless of how significant it is? Absolutely. But this video is about main events as we perceive them before they happen, not after. And that doesn't mean there aren't exceptions to any of these criteria. I took into consideration every possible angle I could think of when looking at all these main events going back to the start of 2014, giving them every benefit of every doubt. So if I marked a main event as weak, you'd be hard-pressed to find many who disagree with me. Okay, so after logging all these cards, did I find a trend that shows main events getting weaker more recently compared to the rest of the last decade? Okay, so what is it that I found? Well, the raw data had me shouting, I fucking knew it. We were totally right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit A, this nifty little percentage bar chart of bad main events over the last decade. And boy, oh fucking boy, when you look at 2023 on, you know, the period of time that this sentiment that started to pop up in the community that main events were starting to kind of suck more than they used to, we see a pretty substantial uptick. In fact, they're the 2 highest years, and a big jump from 2022 to 2023 of nearly 10%. 2025 is not pictured here, but thus far it's on target, with 31% of main events being shit. We got them. These motherfuckers are watering down their drinks and selling them at full price. But hold on, let's not jump to conclusions just yet. There will be plenty of time to storm the UFC HQ with our pitchforks. As I said, this is the raw data. We still have some serious refining to do. There's a few things of note here. 2015 had a ridiculous amount of bad main events, tied with 2024. So that's something to consider because I sure don't remember thinking the UFC sucked that year. And of course, there are going to be outlier years like 2019 as well, where we were as low as 10% of the headliners being weak. But okay, is this really a trend? I mean, several of these years are around 24%. Isn't that pretty close to what we saw in the last year or so? It is indeed. So how do we account for that? We know that fans are feeling this in their bones. That's why we set out to do this video in the first place. So what are we missing? Are we just all wrong and the uptick has only been slight? Well, maybe there's more than meets the eye here. Optimus Prime. How many of these main events were thrown together at the last minute? That's important, right? Because we don't look at thrown together main events that are forced to replace main events that we did want to see that fell apart at the last minute the same way we look at main events that were terrible from the start. Those are the ones when they get announced that we're like, dude, why are we even watching this shit, right? Those have a much bigger negative impact on our perception of the UFC's booking. So what if I took that into account and ran the numbers again to be as absolutely generous as possible to the UFC? What if we, for the sake of trying to figure this shit out, didn't count those weak replacement main events? What would the last decade look like? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Exhibit B. This one is way more damning, and it lines up way better with that fan sentiment, that gut feeling that in the last year or so, something is just off about main events. When you eliminate late replacement main events, 2015 evens out to normal, just a year of absolutely bad luck. For example, recent former champion Benson Henderson, who just moved up to welterweight, was set to take on Thiago Alves, who'd just lost a title eliminator to Carlos Condit. Big welterweight fight with major implications. Instead, Alves drops out 2 weeks before the show, and we get Henderson versus Jorge Masvidal, pre-Street Jesus, only just returning to 170 with zero significance to the division. So these are the types of fights that you can excuse from 2015 and the rest of these years. And 2, the only year to break the teens in percentage of bad headliners is 2024. Last year, 26% of the main events, a massive uptick in what we are generally used to tolerating for bad main events year to year over the last decade. More importantly and more devastatingly, it's the only year where the number didn't really change after considering late replacements. There was only one. That one event that changed was Brendan Allen versus Marvin Vettori originally. The fight that absolutely just barely scrapes the bottom of the not horrible main event criteria barrel, given Allen's streak and former title challenger Vettori's position in the division. So essentially, 2024 has nearly zero excuses. Now, compare that to a decade ago. The worst main event we had was due to a dropout in 2014, and it was Stipe Miocic versus Fabio Maldonado. Fabio had absolutely no business in that fight whatsoever, or even in the heavyweight division, and the result would prove that true, but I would take that any day of the week over Allen versus Curtis 2, or the 2 cards headlined by Marcin Tybura in 2024. So 2024 was built that way. It wasn't the victim of circumstance. 2025 so far, with late replacements in mind, trending right along with 2024 at 23%. We did it. We caught them. Devon, get the pitchforks. Actually, let's hold on for just a second. Keep the pitchforks at ready, but hold on. Because these are still just numbers, and they don't tell the whole story. They just indicate that this feeling fans are having about recent main events is coming from a place of a pretty substantial uptick in such main events, at least by the criteria that I laid out earlier. But the bigger question here isn't whether it was happening, as I'm sure any of you who have felt this way could have already determined just on instinct. The bigger question is what the fuck happened to cause this? And that's where things get a lot more interesting. The first thing that many fans think to blame is there being too many events. They're just putting on too many cards to have great headliners. And while you're absolutely right that if they cut down on their schedule, they probably could go 100% on banger main events, where you'd be wrong is that there's more events to fill than usual. There's not. The last decade, even Pandusky era, has been very consistent. The UFC puts on about 40 or so events a year, and that has not faltered in this decade. In fact, 2014 is the year that has the most events with 46. So if that mid-2010s era is the sweet spot for a lot of fans, you're dealing with just about the exact same number of events year to year, so we can rule that explanation out. What about the star power drought that the UFC is in right now? Could that be what is causing the problem? I mean, how many stars have been truly born since the McGregor-Rousey boom? It's something that fans are noticing more and more, but I don't think it accounts for what we've been seeing here, because star power was only a single factor in my criteria. Being in the top 5 doesn't mean you're a superstar necessarily, but that was one of the types of fights that I was willing to concede counts for a stronger main event. So if star power is a factor, then it's only so much so in that there's not enough truly top-tier fighters right now for the product as a whole to feel like it's rolling like it's 2016 again. But it doesn't account for 2024 because we've had this problem for a good number of years now. What about ESPN? Surely it is not a coincidence that the year that they first started airing shows with their new partner is the year that they had like 2 shitty main events at all. They were dressing to impress. And as the years have gone on, maybe they just got lazy with that guaranteed streaming partner cash. It doesn't sound like the UFC and ESPN are on the best of terms as their deal closes out, or else they'd have renewed before the exclusive negotiation period ended. So maybe it's the UFC just getting as lazy as they can on the way out? But why do that if you're planning to, I don't know, entice a new partner? It doesn't add up. So what the hell is going on? Well, there is this one thing I noticed. Since 2021, when the UFC started going back to live shows with live crowds post-Pandy, 40-ish% of cards have been at the Apex. Want to know what percentage of these bad main events have ended up being Apex cards? Last year, 83%. 2023, 85%. 2022, 89%. 2021, 90%. Yeah, so in case you were thinking that this was just an accident, there's a reason that these suck-ass cards are in a place where there's no crowd, because then nobody's there who can boo it or not buy tickets to it. Just Mark Zuckerberg cosplaying as a dude bro with his meta fucking VR team. So the solution to the problem is right there in our faces. You get rid of the Apex. The UFC would be forced to put on main events that could actually sell tickets. Sorry, Mark, I guess the Apex is not the same. And if you guys really think we can't tell the difference, then why are you hiding all the crappy main events there? I think the answer to our question about this uptick in bad main events recently is entirely related to the fact that they don't have to sell tickets for an Apex show, but they do have obligations to their streaming partners to put on so many events so many times a year. So their logic is, why waste anything good with cards we're going to get guaranteed streaming money for? Who cares if anybody watches? We can save our better shit for live gates, live shows, and the events that actually matter to us, that increase our cultural cachet, that allow us to keep getting streaming deals. If you ask me, it's an entirely conscious and corporate decision to treat these cards as lesser because, let's be honest, that's what they are. So, are UFC main events getting worse? If 2024 is any indicator and 2025 at the moment appears to be on pace, then yeah. But the part that's a lot more interesting is that I think it's on purpose, just like the incredibly purposeful editing of this video by Max Randall. Please follow this legend on all his socials and go check out his awesome YouTube channel. He deserves it. A huge thank you to our channel members. You're all Hall of Famers to me. Seriously, you are the best. Fight fans, if you want to become a member as well, hit the join button. We got exclusive content for you. Like and subscribe for more nerdy breakdowns like this one. Leave your thoughts on the current state of main events in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.